This is the Tampa Bay Tableau user group for February of 2023. And now, there we go. Oh, we've done this slide, Nicole. Thank you, everybody. I'm Nicole. I'm a full-time data visualization engineer, Tableau social ambassador, founder of Women in Dataviz. All these links work, so you can look at all the things if you want to. Some other time, I'm in the neighborhood of VM Ybor, just north of Ybor City. Don is traveling today, but he is usually in Hyde Park. And I'm not sure if he's on the call yet, but he's going to be kind of in the background. If he is later, again, like the links all work, so you can follow them later on or now. And then ways to connect. Feel free to drop your LinkedIn profile, Twitter website, whatever in the chat if you want to connect with folks between meetings. Seems like there's several local people, so that might be nice. There's a LinkedIn group that I haven't really done anything with yet, but maybe we will. There's the link there. The email list I actually used, and we're on Twitter, as many of you know. Moving right along. And I keep hitting the keys on the keyboard, it's not working. So I have May and June, March and April information is coming along shortly. But on May 18th, Ethan Lang is going to join us. If you were here for our very first meeting, he was with us. He talked about helping veterans with data, essentially. This time he's going to talk about Tableau's analytics pane and how to incorporate statistical analyses into your dataviz. And then on June 15th, Andy Cookley, technical evangelist Tableau, is going to join us. He is fun if you have not heard him speak or met him before. And today, Claire is going to talk about Nightingale, and I'm going to talk about blogging for data people. And here's where the Slido is. we're really using the Slido. So I have a swag giveaway today. We have 4 of these gorgeous Tableau cork mugs. Actually, they're very nice. I have one. It has a top. You can take it in the car. If you want to enter to win one, click enter here. It will take you to a Slido where you can put your name. Or I'll figure it out if that doesn't work for everybody. But I'll give everybody a minute, and I'll just for a minute so you can do your name entering. I'll let Claire get started with introducing herself. Good luck.
Great. Should I go ahead and take over screen share, Nicole? Right?
Yes, I think it's fine. Since everybody has a link to the slide, so you can click the link at any time during the presentation. So yeah, go right ahead.
Great.
Very excited to have you, by the way.
Thank you. Thank you very much for having me. All right, so I think I'm sharing my screen now. Drop a note in the chat if it's not working. Anyway, hi everyone. Glad to be here. I'm Claire Santoro, content editor at Nightingale, which is the journal of the Data Visualization Society. So I'm here today to tell you a little bit about DVS and Nightingale. I have some slides put together, but I'm happy for this to just be kind of an informal chat. So if you have questions, just put them in the chat or raise your hand or, whatever. Let's make it more of a conversation. That's fine. I'm happy to kind of tailor the things that I talk about to things that might be interesting to you. I also want to take a minute to apologize. I'm getting over a bad cold. I'm sitting here with my pile of cough drops and my tea. So I'm going to try to make it through without dissolving into a coughing fit. Apologies in advance. Let's see how this goes. All right, so I'll go ahead and get started just by introducing Nightingale. So Nightingale, Journal of the Data Visualization Society, we are a hybrid online and print publication that aims to support and celebrate dataviz of all types. So I'll go into more about, some of the things that we publish, some of the content that we like to promote. But we have been around in various forms for just about 3 years. We started as a website, actually, we started as a publication on Medium, and then about maybe a year and a half ago, moved off of Medium onto our own website so that we could keep all of our content not behind a paywall. That was a complaint we got being a Medium publication, so we wanted to do away with that, make it more accessible. And then just last year, we expanded into a print magazine. And the idea here was that we wanted a place to kind of archive and celebrate a lot of the data visualizations that people were making. A lot of the things that we make are online these days, even if they're not interactive, even if they're static. And we felt like it was important to kind of document and archive the things that our industry is doing. So hence the move into print. I can see that there are things in chat, but I cannot access them. Let's see. There we go. Oh, okay. There's the chat. All right. So moving along, Nightingale. Kind of a strange name for a data visualization publication. We are named after Florence Nightingale. If you've been in the dataviz space for a while now, you probably are already familiar with Florence Nightingale and her connection to dataviz. You've probably seen her rose charts. If you are new to the space or just haven't come across Florence Nightingale before, I encourage you to read a bit about her. RJ Andrews, who is a big friend of Nightingale in the DVS, wrote this article when we launched Nightingale about why we chose her as our namesake. And he's since become really one of the leading experts on Florence Nightingale. He's done a ton of research and worked with other researchers to go down that pathway. So I've included the link here. And I encourage you to do a bit of reading if you don't know about Florence Nightingale's connection to dataviz. Okay, but maybe you're really new to this space, or you just haven't come across the Data Visualization Society before. So before I get too far into Nightingale, I wanted to take a moment just to introduce you to DVS. So here's the mission statement. The Data Visualization Society aims to collect and establish best practices, fostering a community that supports members as they grow and develop data visualization skills. As data grows more central to our personal and professional lives, the practice of data visualization becomes ever more important. So DVS is it's a registered nonprofit in the US, but it has the goal of being a global organization. And in fact, it is. DVS has only been around for 4 years. We actually just celebrated our 4th birthday on Monday. So it's really a young organization, but over those 4 years, it's grown to have more than 22,000 members in more than 80 countries. You can see a bunch of other stats here, most active on LinkedIn and Twitter, as well as Slack, which is really the core of the community. And that's the way that people tend to interact with each other. There are a whole bunch of channels, dozens of channels, where you can connect with other people on specific topics or have channels for specific locations, all sorts of things. So that's really the core of the community. Then of course, there's Nightingale, other things like YouTube channel. I'll get into that in a minute, but DVS is a really large organization, and it's basically trying to build a community of data visualizers around the world. And importantly, that's kind of tool agnostic and welcoming of people who approach data visualization from all different perspectives. So in that sense, it's different than the Tableau community, which is really focused around people who do, one specific type of work with one specific tool. DVS wanted to incorporate people from a variety of fields and backgrounds that use data visualization in some way. So DVS does a lot of things. And I will say, I work specifically for Nightingale, which is part of DVS. It's underneath the DVS banner, but DVS and Nightingale are both large enough on their own that we operate kind of separately in some sense. And so I know a little bit about the things that DVS does. I don't know a lot about the things that DVS does. So if you have questions about specific DVS stuff, I can try to talk a little bit about that, but that's also not really my expertise. But some of the things that DVS does, I mentioned YouTube channel. before. They have a lot of video series. They're all up there, so you can watch them after the fact. A lot of early career content, a lot of interviews and panels, fireside chats with people on various topics. They also have a conference every year. For the past 2 years, it's been fully remote. This year there is, it will still be remote, but there's also an in-person option in Porto, Portugal, if you're looking to take a trip. It was a lot of fun. I attended the past couple sessions, and yeah, encourage you to look into Outlier. This past year, DVS also took over management of the Information is Beautiful Awards, so working together with David McCandless to implement those. And then the last thing that I've put up here is the State of the Industry survey that DVS runs every year with the goal of providing a little bit more information and transparency around how people use dataviz in their jobs, some things about like salary transparency or freelancing rates, things like that, to kind of help build up the community and support it that way. And then there's Nightingale. So Nightingale is in some ways kind of the like the, I don't know, most visible part of DVS. We're the one that's out there that's putting content out regularly that people are most likely to encounter on sort of a day-to-day basis. Like DVS, we do a lot. And also like DVS, we are currently run entirely by part-time and volunteer staff. So this is an area that we are really trying to focus on improving, because it's just not really sustainable to have us like donating so much of our time to do all these things. And so, you know, currently a big focus is figuring out how DVS and Nightingale can become financially self-sustaining so that we can hire more staff, so that we can continue to do all these things and expand. But right now, here's our 4-person team. Jason Forrest is the editor-in-chief. He also runs the data visualization lab at McKinsey. Emily Barone is our managing editor. She actually just started at the beginning of February, so we're super excited to have her on board. She's bringing a lot of new energy. She has a bunch of editorial expertise, working at Time Magazine and some other publications. So we're super excited to have her on board. And there's me. I'm the content editor. I also do some freelance consulting for my sort of day job. And then Julie Brunet is our creative director. She's a data designer and illustrator based in Paris. So that's our core team. But I would be totally remiss if I didn't mention that we also have a committee of volunteer editors. We have about 15 or so, and kind of ebbs and flows as people get busy and they sort of get more or less involved. But they do everything from actually helping edit the articles that we're publishing on our website and in our magazine, as well as just brainstorming content for the articles in the magazine. So what you're looking at here is actually a brainstorm for things that we could put into issue 3 of our magazine, which is the upcoming edition. So it was a lot of fun. We had a Google Jamboard. We had this meeting where people were just, you know, in real time putting ideas on the page, and we were trying to kind of make a plan for what we wanted to see in the next issue of the magazine. So it's a lot of fun. I'll talk more about how you can get involved if you want to later, but just to add a note now that if this is something that you are interested in, either editing content or just kind of helping plan and envision Nightingale, then get in touch, because we're always looking for new faces. So just a little bit about kind of the focus of Nightingale and the types of things that we do, the types of content that we host. So we see ourselves as a community celebration. We really want to be kind of a fun and supportive environment for people who love data visualization. As I mentioned before, we have a global focus. By and large, our readers and our writers tend to come from the United States and Western Europe. We are constantly trying to expand beyond that, but that is kind of unfortunately where things are these days, is that most of the writers that we hear from tend to come from a very small number of countries, but we really want to expand that. We're tool agnostic, as I mentioned, wanting to support people whether they are designers or developers, whether they work in Excel or Tableau or R, Python. Supporting new voices as well. We have a lot of first-time writers, and that's important to us. And so our editors will work with them throughout the process to kind of help get their content, make sure it's high quality. That also means we focus on student work. We really like to showcase student work. And also, of course, people from other parts of the world, people who may not be comfortable writing in English, and we do what we can to support them through that process and publish translations as well. Also support the community with different community features, reviews. We like to be a repository of like book reviews or, courses and trainings. So when people have questions about where to start in learning dataviz, they can kind of turn to Nightingale for some of that information. And we do compensate all our writers and illustrators, not a lot because we are a small, very young nonprofit, but that's important to us. We also, are kind of trying to help support and implement the DVS mission, which is to nurture, celebrate, and advance dataviz and data visualizers. So I think I've actually touched on most of these things already, but some of the ways we do this are, we have a section focused specifically on career advice. We call it career tooltips. We also have a kids section called the kids table. And so we're super excited. Both of those are kind of in their infancy, and we have a lot of ideas for how to make them bigger, how to make them better, kind of people to get involved in those sections and really expand them. But yeah, they're kind of two of the sections that we're trying to grow. We also like to do some explorations of history, dataviz history, our origins. I mean, the Florence Nightingale piece is one example of that, but of course there's many others. I mentioned reviews. The idea about advancing the field, DVS has very naturally become a place where early career folks feel comfortable turning for advice and guidance, but we wanted to make sure that we also engage sort of data visualization experts who might not, as naturally seek out the information that DVS and Nightingale are sharing. And so we've made a point of trying to bring in some of those bigger names, some of those experts in the field through commissioned pieces and getting them to really share their thoughts on kind of the direction that the field is headed, or some particular challenges or opportunities for growth, so that we can help move the field forward, as well as bringing in early career folks. So let's chat a little bit about Nightingale Magazine, because this is one of the things we're most excited about, because it's kind of our newest expansion area. We have published 2 issues of the magazine so far, and both of them actually sold out. Issue 1, we did a second print run, so there are copies of that still available. Issue 2, we have not done a second print run yet, so it is currently sold out. And issue 3 will be coming soon. So we're working on the content for that now, and we'll launch pre-orders soon. The goal is to probably ship in April or May for issue 3. Issue 3 will be on the editorial theme of guidelines, which we're excited about. The first 2 issues were on culture and inspiration, and this one is guidelines. And so we're encouraging people to interpret this a bit creatively. So it's not just going to be a magazine full of how-tos. There are a lot of really good, more like academic and textbook style resources out there that can tell you the how-tos of data visualization. So there will be some of that, but we're also trying to think about things like when might you want to break the rules, or what cool stuff has been created because someone broke the rules of dataviz. And then also bringing in some personal narrative, thinking about how dataviz sort of guides us and forms that guideline through our personal and professional journeys. So super excited about it. We're currently working on building it out and compiling the content for that right now. So let's look at some examples of what we publish. The rest of my slides are mostly just images, and so we can kind of talk through some of the things that you might see in Nightingale, both magazine and website. So this is actually one of the early data vizes that I created. And this is how I got involved in Nightingale. I published this data viz, and the then managing editor of Nightingale reached out to me to write an article about it. So I did. That was really neat. I was excited about it. And from there, kind of got more and more involved to become where I am now, content editor. Here's another piece, more recent piece that I've worked on. This was in the magazine and was a lot of fun. So this was actually a research piece where I've interviewed Ed Hawkins, the creator of the warming stripes graphic, and worked with a really awesome data designer, Cheska Kirkland, based in the UK, to kind of collect some data on how the warming stripes have been used since Ed Hawkins published them, and to kind of trace the impact of the warming stripes and the conversation about climate change over time. So Cheska came up with this infographic that you're seeing here. This was a really fun project. So those are a couple pieces that I personally have worked on. Of course, there's much more. The kinds of stuff that we publish comes from a variety of places. People are using a variety of different tools. So some of the things you're looking at here, Flag Stories was a website where they visualized the world's flags, different little facts about them, size, shape, color, whatnot. We have some history about W.E.B. Du Bois and the accompanying hashtag Du Bois Challenge, which I don't know if any of you are participating in. It's going on Twitter right now. I think it happens every year in the month of February. So encourage you to check that out. If you're not, it's kind of fun. I think the challenge is to like remix or recreate Du Bois visualizations using modern data and modern tools. And then there's Viz in the Wild, which was kind of a fun, quirky Instagram series of photos that look like they could be charts. So we always like to include some sort of random, not chart content as well. Some more examples. As I said, people use a variety of tools. So we've got everything in the magazine from like really artistic illustrations to handcrafted data viz, which is one of my personal favorites. I love hearing examples of people taking the time to make things by hand, to things that look more like your traditional interactive website dashboard type tool. We also have data visualization challenges. And so these are a great way to get involved if any of you are interested. So one of our challenges is the Data is Plural Visualization Challenge. If you're not familiar with the Data is Plural newsletter, I encourage you to check it out. Jeremy Singervine puts it out weekly. It's a great place to find interesting data sets. The newsletter is basically a collection of interesting data sets on a particular topic that he finds. And so we get him to pick a data set on a particular theme, and we encourage people to visualize it however they like. So you're seeing some examples of people's submissions at the bottom of the screen. Our second challenge is something completely different, which is Dear Nightingale. This kind of came about as a play on Georgia Lupi and Stephanie Posavec's Dear Data. It's an analog data visualization challenge. And so the idea here is to not use a computer to make a chart, but instead to create something tangible. And so again, you can see some examples of what people submitted at the bottom of the screen. It's a lot of fun. It's a way to get creative and just kind of experiment, get outside your comfort zone, not think so much about making a perfect chart in the way that you would using software and an actual, detailed data set, but to do something a little bit more freeform and experimental. Of course, I know you all are Tableau users, and we do publish Tableau stuff as well. By the nature of it, that's a little bit harder to do in print, and so a lot of it ends up on our website, although we certainly have adapted some pieces for print if there's a piece that can be pulled out in a static format. And then, so here are a couple examples of spotlight pieces that were Tableau based. We also have a bunch of career focused content. And so if that's something you're interested in, depending kind of where you are in your career and what you're looking for, you can also check some of that out on our website as well. Zoe, I see your comment. I can provide a link later. It was Jeremy Singer Vine, and his newsletter is Data is Plural. Okay, so the last thing I wanted to get into, I don't know if this is going to be interesting to you, but it was really interesting to me because before we started making a magazine, we didn't know how to make a magazine. None of us had ever done it before. And so it's kind of an interesting problem to think about, like, how do you print a magazine? How do you ship a magazine globally? So anyway, just a little snapshot into our process. Once we get an article and, have edited the content and it feels like it's good to go, we're working entirely in InDesign. Nicole, thanks for providing the links. And so all of our layout happens in InDesign, which is a bit of a fun process. So we basically go from something that looks like the bottom right-hand corner of the screen that's like super bare bones, just kind of a sketch of what an article layout could look like. Like that's kind of what I would do when I put an article into InDesign, and then I give it to our creative director, Julie, and Julie makes it really beautiful. She changes things around, she adds illustrations, she kind of makes it a little quirky and fun. And so that's more of what you're seeing in the big image in the background. So anyway, this is a totally manual process. It's really involved, but it's really fun. Some of the challenges with this were thinking about things like style guides. I mean, obviously we have a style guide for our website, but it's not as specific because the variety of content that we're publishing online means that, like, if you look at our homepage, just all of the different visualizations that are published for each article, they're all in different styles. They all use different colors. So it's just kind of an eclectic mishmash. And so we don't try too hard on style guide on our website because it's always going to be that way. We always publish an eclectic mix of things. But for a magazine, you really want it to feel a little bit more unified. And so thinking through, what did we want the magazine to feel like? What fonts did we want to use? What color palettes did we want to use? That was a really fun exercise, and not something that I'd really had the opportunity to do before. So anyway, we finish everything in InDesign. We get a compiled PDF. We send it to the printer. Our printer, the current printer that we're using, is based in Berlin. Cost efficient that way. And so they then send back proofs for us to look through. So here are some photos of those proofs. You can see it's not an actual bound magazine, but it's just for checking things like that the colors are rendering well and that the text isn't getting cut off in the margins, things like that. And this is our last chance to make any edits. This is, again, a big change from publishing online, where if you need to update a link or fix a typo, you can just do that and it's fine. You can change it at any point. In print, you obviously can't. And so we're really careful to try to fix as many things as possible. And so then once we have signed off on the proofs, it goes into production. And so what you're seeing here are the in-process photos. And this is really interesting to me because unlike a home printer, you're not printing one page at a time. You can see that there are actually 8 pages per sheet of paper. This also means that when we're planning a magazine, we have to plan out the content in multiples of 8 pages. You can't have, an odd page here and there. You could, but you'd be wasting a lot of paper and it would cost a lot more to do it that way. So you try to plan things out in exact multiples of 8. So that's kind of an interesting challenge. And then you can see in the second photograph, the just absolutely massive stack of paper. It's so many pages. And I think that was surprising to us as well, just seeing what this looks like. This was a print run of, I think, 2,000 magazines, and they just have multiple stacks of these pages. So anyway, then it all gets cut and bound into the magazine, packaged up for shipping, goes to our distributor, makes its way to people around the world. So anyway, really fascinating process. I'll just end before taking some questions, if you have them, by saying we would love for you to get involved. So one good way to get involved is to write for us. We always love content from people of all skill levels, of all backgrounds and perspectives, no matter what your role is. So some examples of what this could look like: you could pick a visualization that you've made and write a little bit about the behind the scenes. What was your process? What design decisions or tool decisions did you have to make in order to make the visualization? We love that sort of thing. You can submit to our dataviz challenges. Both of the ones that I showed are actually, we're not currently accepting submissions. We had to have a deadline in order to get the submissions into the 3rd edition of the print magazine. But there will be another round of challenges with issue 3, and you don't have to be a magazine subscriber in order to participate. We do post the challenges on our website as well. Career advice. We're a strong believer in the fact that everyone, regardless of their career stage, can provide some advice. So think about that. We have a really fun series called Dataviz Horror Stories. And the idea is basically to help normalize the idea of quote unquote failure as just part of professional development. So we get people to write about times when in some way they messed up, maybe they made something that didn't quite fit the brief, or they made something that they loved and it got, crickets online and they were really disappointed. So it's kind of a lessons learned, like, here's this bad situation that happened, here's what I learned from it. It's okay, because we're all in this together. Even the superstars still mess up regularly. So this is a really fun, lighthearted series, and we're always looking for more submissions for that. Reviews I've mentioned. So if you take a course or attend a conference, read an interesting book, feel free to write it up as a review. Interviews, we love interviews. So I don't know, are your coworkers doing interesting things? Think about chatting with them and writing it up for Nightingale, or anything else. So if you want to get involved, feel free to drop us an email. There are some other ways to find us as well. So we, of course, our website, our email, we have a newsletter that I put out every 2 to 3 weeks. So you can sign up, there's the link. And of course, the DVS website as well. So that's all I had prepared. I'm happy to take questions if there are other questions. Otherwise, thanks so much for having me.
I have a question. So, well, first of all, it was fascinating to hear about how you put the magazine together, because that was the thing that I was thinking is, I don't know how you make a magazine. That makes sense. But how long does it take you to put together an issue?
Oh, that's a good question. So I should say issue 1 took, I don't know, like the better part of a year, because we had no idea what we were doing. And we were just trying to figure it out as we went. And of course, anyone who works for a nonprofit will be familiar with this challenge of, like, you need money in order to do the thing, but people don't want to give you money until they know you can do the thing. So that was a challenge too. So issue 1 took forever. Issue 2 and now issue 3, we are doing in about 2 months. So it's actually really fast. I would love to have a little bit more time, but also because all of us are doing this kind of on the side of our day jobs or as part of like a freelance career, we don't have a lot of time. And so we try to do it as efficiently as possible. So for issue 3, for example, February 15th was the content submission deadline. That's when we asked everyone to send in content that they would like to have considered. So we are 1 week into reviewing submissions, coming up with a plan for what's going to be in the magazine, how many pages we think each of those articles should be, and which ones need illustrators, which ones need, I don't know, anything else. And so we will continue that for a few weeks while also starting to transition into layout and design at the end of February. So And then sort of February, March are really all layout and design. At the very end of March, kind of first week or two of April, we'll be doing really intense copy editing, making sure we find all those typos, double checking things like submission dates. That was something we messed up in the first issue. We put the wrong submission date. So things like that we try to find. And then our goal with issue 3 is to get it to the printers in mid to late April, so that it'll be shipping like late April, early May. So it's about a 2-month process.
That is impressive that y'all can have done that in 2 months. And I can imagine, yeah, the first one would take a long time.
Yeah, it is a big process. And I think the thing that makes it possible is that we have such an engaged community. And so we get really high quality submissions. We get a lot of people who would like their work to be featured. And so, you know, if we had to spend a lot more time tracking down submissions and content, it would be a lot harder. But it's fantastic that so many people want to be involved and are, willing to work with us to see their work featured.
And I should say, because you reminded me just now, the Data Visualization Society Slack, I'll find the link to that and put it in the chat also. There's always talk around, you know, stories that have been a Nightingale, or people share their work. And there really are, I believe that you could get a bajillion incredible submissions, because there are so many very, very talented people in those conversations all the time.
Yeah. And I forgot to mention early on when I was talking about DVS, you can join DVS for free and you get access to the full Slack that way. And yes, there are tons of channels. There's one specifically for inspiration where people post cool visualizations that they thought were really neat. There's channels for feedback and critique if you have a draft that you're working on that you want feedback on. So yes, you can join for free, access the Slack community that way. There are, of course, paid tiers as well where you get sort of additional perks, but at its core, it's free.
Yeah. I just learned last week there's a data journalism channel. I did not know that until last week, and I think I've been on there for like 2 years. So if you have other questions, either put them in the chat or I can unmute you. There's a small enough group that it's totally fine. If you want to talk, now I have lost the chat window. Do you do any K-12 engagement? That's a good question.
Yeah, so we try. So this is one of the areas that we're thinking about expanding. We have our kids section, which is called the kids table. And so we love getting different articles and activities to put into that section. So for example, the first issue of our magazine, we had a supplement. It was like a little half-size zine that was the kids table. And so it had a series of articles and activities, kind of data viz prompts for kids. So that was what we did for the first issue. For the second issue, we made this fold out poster that had some activities with a little bit of orienting text. So we're still kind of playing around with formats. We like the idea of doing creative things for kids that go along with the magazine. One day, probably selling those separately so that teachers and schools can, just get, a batch of kids table instead of having to buy them paired with a magazine. But we're kind of ramping up slowly on logistics. So that's not what we're doing right now. And then we also publish things online for kids as they come. It tends to be a mix, so it's not just K through 12, and sometimes it's like pieces where, I don't know, a parent or teacher is describing what they did. Other times it's more of like a prompt for kids themselves. So we kind of we're open. We do a little bit of everything, but that is a huge area of focus for us. We are so excited about the idea of bringing kids into data and data viz earlier. And so we'd love to kind of bring in more experts in that area to really flesh out that section. Yeah, and museums, absolutely. We love the idea of partnering with museums. We've had a few contacts with museum curators and would love to keep going in that direction. I don't know if any of you have connections either in, early education or museums, or I don't know, even actually not just like K through 12 education, but we talked about higher ed as well, getting into higher ed libraries and things like that. I don't know if you have ideas, send them our way.
This question about kids and dataviz had me think of someone recently sent me a link to an Instagram account of kids data visualizations, and I'll try to find it and share with everybody. It's really cute. It's very sweet. And yeah, absolutely. Like, I think it's amazing that kids are starting to do some data viz. But yeah, there's definitely still a need in the higher education level for sure, because I meet some adults that I teach some stuff to.
Right.
Sometimes.
What works for kids works for adults too.
And Claire put the link to the printer, Zoe, that you had asked about. Any additional questions? Oh wait, let's see. Any additional questions for Claire? Let me move this window over here. Okay, well, you can continue to ask questions if you think of them as I am talking. Yeah, that was so informative. Thank you so much, Claire. I knew I was gonna love having you. I love academic journals. I love things that are in print that are kind of lo-fi. I knew I'd love that. Let's see, I'll switch back to sharing. And hopefully I can make this happen. All right, let me know if you can see my screen. Oh, it says participants can see your screen. I'm sure that's correct. Now, let me see. There we go. Okay. Uh-oh. Let's see. How do I get that? Goodness gracious. Sorry, guys. I'm still learning this Gamma platform for slides. I hate PowerPoint. I hate Google Slides. So I was so excited to discover this. I actually learned about it from Connor, whose last name I never remember. But he taught a workshop about D3 during the IB Awards. There was some workshop activity happening. Yeah, and I was like, what is this slide deck you're using? So I'm going to talk today about blogging for data people. You may or may not know, I have a blog called Select All from Data that is on Medium and Substack. I thought maybe I was the only one that could not choose one platform, but I was reading some advice for new bloggers while I was putting together this presentation. That is just I'm kind of trying it out on you guys. So it was a newer idea, something that sort of came to fruition because of some conversations I had with various people asking me about various questions about what do you do in terms of blogging? Can you make any money blogging? Do you, where should you blog, etc. So I have my content posted on 2 platforms. There are some people that use more than that. I'll get into platforms in a little bit. And I'm not looking at the chat while I am sharing. So if you have questions, just put them in there and I promise I'll answer them. So very much like the 5 W's of writing or journalism, this is how I'm going to approach the topic: who, what, when, where, and why, or how, I guess is another one. But so who, it's about you and your audience. So let's presume for the sake of this discussion that you want to start a blog, and maybe you don't want to, and that's wonderful as well. So if that's something that you want to do, I think the most important first step you can take is to think about who you are as a person and what part of that you want to convey in your writing. If you've read my writing, it's occasionally serious, but often more lighthearted, a little sarcastic sometimes. I enjoy having fun with writing. I was an undergrad English major, so I feel like I'm doing something with my degree when I write. So that's always nice. Yeah, so think about who you are and what you want to share, and think about who your potential audience is. And your potential audience kind of ties in with the platform that you choose and the topics that you write about. So I'll get to those momentarily. But have those people in mind, or even kind of like in user experience design, we have, user personas, which I know dataviz people are using more and more. Even create like a user persona of who your typical, quote unquote, typical reader might be. And then what topics do you plan to write about? Like maybe you plan to write about data, maybe you plan to write about dataviz, maybe you plan to write about something altogether different. I suggest you choose topics that you feel passionately about and you're going to want to write on a regular cadence. And then you have probably some knowledge of, although frankly, I just wrote a post that I have not published yet about doing some calculations for a visualization that I was making in JavaScript, and like how the thinking process was different for me than when I used Python. It stood out enough to me that I wanted to write about it. So I might not be an expert there, but I think it's going to be a fun read anyway. So scheduling, the thing, I knew I had slides about this. Okay, here we go. Oh, I'll go back to blog analytics as well. Consistency is probably the most important thing you can do to make a blog successful, aside from writing well. And writing well can be made, or writing correctly anyway, can be made a lot easier with tools like Grammarly, for instance, which I was kind of against using for a while because I was like, I know how to write. But I installed it as an experiment, and it does give me good suggestions. So I suggest it, even if you're a brilliant writer, sometimes you need help. So choose the cadence and stick to it. And that could be once a month. It could be once a quarter, once a week. I don't know who could do this 3 times a week, but if you can, more power to you, do it. But stick to it. I think that's a huge part of the reason my blog has readers at all, is because they can expect that in the next month I will create several blog posts, depending on the month. This past month was a little fewer than usual, but on the whole, I'm doing about 4 a month. I suggest using a content planner. This FigJam template, I made it a little generic so that you can duplicate it in Figma and do whatever you want to do with it. Let's see if it's gonna let me. Oh, I can open it within here. How exciting! But I can't interact with it in here. Anyway, so what I usually do is I'll lay out for next month what I want to do in terms of posts. And I look at the whole month like this. I have a recurring post called Metrics Monday that I usually do on the first or second Monday of the month. I have another recurring post every Thursday, things that I do every other Thursday. And then Meet the Data Fam. I've been doing every other Friday. I was doing it once a month, but I've had so much participation from all of you lovely people that I have more guests than I know what to do with. So I've been publishing it a little bit more. So what I usually do, even if I don't have topics yet, is I lay this out for the next month. Like I have a little emoji for each type of post, but do what works for you. I also have a Google Sheets template that's adapted from HubSpot's content planner that I'll show you in a minute. That might be better for you, but this works best for me because I don't have to be, it's not too detailed. I'm just like, okay, here's kind of the plan for the month. And usually over here on these little sticky notes, I have some topic ideas or a link if I'm working on something already. I have about 80 draft blog posts for about various things that some of them I'll probably finish and some not. The HubSpot link right here has a pretty good social media. It says it's a social media content planner, but it works perfectly well for blog posts. And I mean, I would suggest that you integrate your social media activity with your blog posting, especially if you're blogging related to your career or related to something you want to be your career. It helps you build your personal brand. As much as I dislike that phrase, I mean, it is a thing that we all kind of have to do. So I usually, after I write a post, Substack is great about this. They will give you some graphics that go with your post. They'll send them to you by email, and I'll put that in Instagram in a story with a link or something like that. It makes it super easy. There are whole planners and schedulers for social media and for blogs that I occasionally will use, especially if I know I'm going to be super duper busy. But more likely, I'm using this one Figma template. And I think I'm going to pause for a second and see if there are any questions before I continue on. There we go. Okay, great. No, or I don't know. I guess that's good. I'm gonna say that's good. So where to blog? I'm going to give you a really quick rundown of some of the platforms that I think are most ideal, and then I'll tell you kind of what I think is less ideal and why I think that. I love Substack, but Medium is a better place for me to post in terms of reach, and I'll show you some data about that momentarily. I get a lot more engagement on Medium. Posts get shared more. I have more interactivity with people on Medium, but then I might have higher quality interactions sometimes on Substack. So, well, I'll finish about Medium before I start talking about Substack. So Medium's been around for a long time. They have figured out how to make the blogging platform work. I still like them after, I don't know, I've used the platform for like 5 years maybe. Yeah, they have a partner program that I just recently, as in like last year, joined, just because I was kind of curious about, really, do people make any money? No, you don't. Just, I mean, I make like $50 a month, and that's not nothing, but also like a post that made me $50 a month has 12,000 views. So I would suggest that you not decide to be a full-time blogger until you experiment with if it's working. But it is a nice, I mean, it's nice to see like extra dollars in my bank account because I wrote some blog posts. Substack is a newsletter model. You probably know this already, and so is Beehive. But Beehive and Substack to a degree too, they're both sort of hybrid. It's a website, it's also a newsletter. I think Beehive does both equally well. Substack feels more like a newsletter, so if that feel is important to you, the Substack has you can put you can actually use footnotes. If you've ever read, I have a crush on Ben Stansel. He knows this. Everyone in the world knows this. Ben Stansel from Mode Analytics. He writes a brilliant Substack newsletter that I encourage you to read, partly because it's honestly, truly super insightful. Also, he's a fantastic writer. He uses so many footnotes, and they're all kind of random and kind of hilarious. Zoe, so I think the Substack interactions I have, so Zoe asked, can you describe how the Substack interactions are more meaningful, or however I characterized it? So I think Medium is more geared toward a general audience. And I find at least the people that read my Substack newsletter, and maybe this is different for other people, but most of them also write their own. And most of them are professional dataviz people. So if they ask me a question or I ask them a question, it's probably more technical or nuanced than a question I'll get on Medium. Not to say the Medium question isn't bad or wrong or whatever, but I feel a little bit more intellectually engaged sometimes on Substack. Yeah, that's pretty much it. And then, as I said, so Substack and Medium are both free. Medium, you can pay for a monthly subscription. I think it's $5. So you can read everything on the site, but blogging is free. Same with Substack. Substack has, and I mean, Medium does too, but it's a different model. So if you want to be paid directly for your writing, Substack has a payment model that is easy to implement, but I just don't feel like I don't feel like I need to charge right now. But if you do, I think if for whatever reason that makes sense to you, or you're providing some sort of content, some educational content, or there's some other reason why it makes sense for you to charge for a newsletter, I think it's a really easy platform to do it on. Beehive you pay to use the tool, and other people can pay you or not. I use Beehive for the Women in Dataviz newsletter just because I was curious about it. It has a lot of customizability in terms of if you write HTML and CSS, you can have a much more customized look and feel to your newsletter than you can with Substack. And while we're talking about the user experience, our UI design, Medium, I think because you've probably noticed this if you read anything on Medium, people will often customize their profiles such that the colors and fonts are like an assault on your eyes. So they have decided that they're not going to allow you to customize certain parts of your profile anymore, which is completely fine with me because I'm tired of trying to read like white text on a pink background that someone didn't realize was going to be difficult. But they're going to deal with that problem on a large scale, apparently. Oh my goodness. You don't need to visit the Substack website, guys. It's not that. So why blog? For me, it's because I enjoy writing. I enjoy contributing to discourse around data visualization, around Work culture, I found, is one of my favorite topics. Is like, I do not like the whole like hustle and grind kind of like run yourself into the ground glorification of busy situation. So that's a place to like to talk a little about why I feel that way, and to have some people send me some hate mail on Twitter. That's fun. Contributing to the community is important to me. I write a recurring post called Meet the Data Fam that I mentioned previously when I was talking about content planning, where I choose a person or ask a person, or they ask me in the Tableau community to answer the same questions. I do the same questions for each guest. They don't have to answer every single one. I ask them to answer about 10 out of 15 or thereabouts. I give them a lot of freedom because it's more fun that way. And yeah, they answer some questions about where they're from, what led them to their career or their involvement in data visualization, whatever that is. I ask them about astrology. I ask them everything I want to ask, and regardless if it's kind of ridiculous. I wasn't sure how it would go, but it's been really well received by the Tableau community, and it's been really fun to do. And I'm learning a lot about people that I didn't know very well before. I'm not so good at advancing the slides. Maybe there, maybe not, maybe. All right, is that my last slide? Yes, it is. Okay. So questions about any of this, meant to be just kind of a quick overview. I haven't built out a lot of nuance. I kind of want to give people just the basics of how do I get started with this. The most common question that I hear from people is why, like, I want to create a blog, but I don't feel like I have anything new to say. Well, we have, like, there are billions of people on the planet, and most of us don't have anything extremely new to say, honestly. But what we do have is a unique perspective on the world. And I mean, I've read, I don't even know how many, like I've read so many blogs and books and articles about data visualization, and some people's perspectives resonate more with me than other people's perspectives, or I like someone's writing style a lot. Like I was talking about my crush on Ben Stansel. I love his writing style. That would be a stalker if I knew where he lived. Let's see. Questions I can answer, or thoughts. There are a lot of, and also something I didn't incorporate into here, but consistency is so important that I would say err on the side, even if you're going to write a much shorter post once a month, consistency is more important than length. In fact, length can be detrimental. Oh, I was going to show you some statistics. That's what it was. I was like, I forgot something. Let me share my screen for a moment. Oh, I'm still screen sharing. I think maybe. No. So let me know if you can see this, if someone would just tell me in the chat if you can see this. There's a bar chart with green bars on the right and a list on the left. This screen is from, this is from Medium. It's from a post that I wrote not too long ago. And it's showing me, and this was, and I find one of the reasons I stay on Medium is I find the analytics interesting. Thank you, Jose. I appreciate it. For instance, on oh, it wasn't this one. It's another one. Well, I'll tell you that in a minute. So you have all these external referrals, so you can see where your traffic is coming from. So at one point I was like, I'm done with LinkedIn. When I look at my blog traffic, now this one was a little bit different. This one was, it was very opinionated. So I think that's why I did well. Write a strong opinion, though. That will help you do well. It's fun to see where the traffic came from. I mean, it's fun for me, but it's also important for you if your income is contingent upon content creation. But I do enjoy finding out. So one of the reasons I didn't quit LinkedIn when I wanted to is usually about half of the traffic to my blog comes from there. This post was a little bit different, but in general, that's the way it is. The reason I chose this one, not because it had 12,000 views, no, is because it had your reader's interest figured out. You need a certain number of readers or viewers in order for Medium's algorithm to output this chart. And this one is a pretty good one. And I believe this is true, that my readers are interested in technology, data science, etc. I hope so, or else they're going to be bored, probably. So Medium has good analytics. Substack has pretty good analytics and getting better all the time. I haven't really... Beehive sends me some charts that I don't like the appearance of. So I haven't dug into the data yet, but I will at some point. And partly I don't because I know that group pretty well. We're on a Slack channel together. I feel like maybe there's some analytic insights there that I haven't missed, perhaps. Another way that you can use data to help you with creating a successful blog is to look at which of your posts is doing the best in terms of readership or viewership. Let's see, I have a Tableau workbook here that I'm gonna drag over here and hope you can see it. This is not a full-fledged finished dataviz or anything, but I was looking at some of this stuff as I was preparing, and I thought you might find it interesting. You can see over time the number of followers you gained and the number of followers on this chart in pink that you lost. And so I look at this data point in April where I lost 15 followers, right? I mean, I'm not losing sleep over losing 15 followers, honestly, but I'm curious about it. So I went to look back at what I had written about. And then it made sense to me. Sometimes I'm opinionated, sometimes I use fun language, and occasionally people don't like it, but more people like it than don't. What was the topic? Oh, it was something around hustle culture. Actually, we can probably see if we look at, okay, so this is, I was going to tell you, like, when I look at what I wrote about to help me determine what to write about or not to write about in the future, one thing that was insightful for me in this chart is this third post. Let's see, I don't know if you can see. Anyway, you could probably not see this very well, but this third post, my ADHD productivity stack, which was very easy to write. I wrote about a couple of apps and tools that I use for managing my ADHD and getting things done and not losing my job, essentially. Like Toggle Track, the time tracker, and I don't know, what else do I have there? I use AkiFlow now, which like pulls all my calendars together. Anyway, so there are a couple of apps that I use all the time, and this was a super easy thing to write, and I mean 2,400 people read it, so I was like, maybe I should write more about ADHD. So I'm writing another post right now based on that data. Like, I didn't really plan to write another one quite yet, about that topic. I would at some point when something amused me or whatever. But yeah, so I was like, maybe I should write something that, is based on the data that I'm seeing here. And there was this post, the New York Times is the divided data Twitter. You all might remember this circular COVID-19 graphic. If you were alive and involved in data visualization at that time, I think that you probably remember that. I wrote a kind of flippant post about it, and the analytics on that were interesting too, more than my usual ones, because it ended up being a post that Medium promoted. If they promote your post, the analytics get different. Obviously, new people are seeing the content that wouldn't otherwise. I'm also just now realizing that this series that I did about UX design for data visualization did pretty well. But one thing I wanted to point out, so I was writing this Metrics Monday column for a while, and I felt like I should continue doing it because, I'm a data analyst, whatever. But every time it would come time to write it, I was starting to be like, I really don't want to do this. So I looked at how many people are really reading it, and it's not that many. So I gave myself permission to just be like, nope, no more Metrics Monday, at least not for now, at least until I feel like there's some metric that I feel like writing about again. I know already which one it's going to be, but not now, not in the mood. I just need a break. Yeah, so that's what I was missing in the middle of my presentation before. Oh, and you asked me what the topic was, so let me see if I can remember. Oh, I think I did an abortion chart. That's what it was. It wasn't my language this time, I don't think. It was not long after, if I'm not mistaken, you'd be wrong about this. It was not long after Roe v. Wade was overturned. I wrote a little bit about like why visualizing women's health data, is important. And sorry, operating my computer and also speaking are challenging for me. There we go. I can do it. That is all I have right now. Yeah, if you have questions, let me know. I put the link to the slide deck, which has a link to my Twitter and other bajillion social media accounts. So feel free to reach out on any of those channels if you have questions that you think of later. Or if you want to get in touch about anything related to the Tampa Tableau user group. One piece of feedback I would be interested in hearing from people in the group is how interested or open you are, because I've gotten a couple of emails about this is the reason I'm asking, how interested or open you are to an in-person meetup sometime this spring. No solid dates or anything like that right now, but if it's of interest to you, please let me know, either LinkedIn group, send me a message on Twitter, send me an email, whatever. Yeah, I'm curious to know about that. I'm thinking people are probably, especially in Florida, probably ready to get together in person. And I think that will do it for us today. Claire, thank you so much for being here. Your presentation was fascinating. And I encourage all of you, I did not know that Nightingale was all volunteer. So if you're interested, I encourage you to get involved with Nightingale. And especially if you only use Tableau, I have a piece of advice for you. If you only use Tableau, that's fine. That's wonderful. That was me for a long time. But branch out a little bit and check out some of the other data communities like Our Ladies or Tidy Tuesday, or those are both R focused and they both can't chime in quickly, but if you have a tool that you're using or are interested in using and you don't know like what community, like DVS is great for all of the tools. Women in Dataviz, the group that I run, we talk about we have a channel for all of the tools, so please feel free to come join us and talk about all the tools. But I recommend just see what's out there, see what your interests are. There are tools I've learned I love and tools I've learned I really do not love, by way of just curiosity. Yeah, but feel free to get in touch about anything with either me or John. He's traveling right now, so I'm probably the more accessible person at the moment. Can't wait to see you all next time. Probably just about in 4 weeks on a Wednesday or Thursday. I really am going to wrap that up within a day or so. I'm trying to confirm with the speaker. Thanks again, Claire. Really appreciate it.
Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. Anytime. Have a wonderful day, y'all.